Hello, everyone, and welcome to Love Like Crazy. I'm Jay, and I'm joined by my beautiful wife, Stacey, and this is episode 2. And today we're going to take some time just to kind of tell you our life story. We're going to share with you the highlights of what makes up the marriage that we have shared now for 30 years.
Our love story.
Our love story. I like that.
Our love story. Yeah, this is going to be a fun topic to discuss.
Well, we're actually going to just kind of hit the highlights, share some of the different things that we've experienced throughout the years. And once again, you guys know that Love Like Crazy is all about building a stronger marriage and a stronger family. And it's based off 1 Corinthians 13 of these three remain: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love, because the love within your life, within your marriage, the love that you have for God, it will carry you through whatever this life brings against you. Now, as we get off into this podcast today, it's been a difficult week. You see, what happened was my oldest son, Tyler, he had an exercise ball. He was bouncing it in the living room. He bounced it off his son, Hudson's head. Hudson's 2 years old. And it bounced off Hudson's head and it hit my wife's favorite lamp in the living room. And that lamp fell to the ground. It shattered. And Stacey?
It was like in slow motion, I think. You know, I was the one that asked for the exercise ball, but not necessarily that it should be played with in the house. And it was like slow motion when it bounced off Hudson's head and hit the ground and shattered into pieces. And it was a sad moment for me, sad moment.
Well, some of you are probably wondering, how was Hudson through all this?
He was oblivious.
He thought it was the greatest thing in the world. He just loved the ball bouncing off his head.
Right.
And your lamp, where do we stand at this point with the lamp?
Well, we have found a replacement for the lamp, but I was just devastated because it was absolutely a lamp that I loved, and it was the last one when I bought it, and I haven't been able to find anything remotely close to it, but we did find a replacement.
So pray for us as we make our way through this.
Yeah.
It's been a lot of conversations in the Coleman household.
Who would
ever thought over a lamp?
I didn't know if I wanted to cry or just like go off on everybody. Because I was so sad and upset all at the same time.
All right, let's change the subject because we don't want to stir anything up.
Don't get me started.
Let's talk about our love life and where we started. I do love to tell people, I'm 50 years old. You are somewhere in that neighborhood.
Right.
But when we were much younger, I love to tell people that I had married an older woman.
Mm-hmm,
and I love to tell people that I met my wife in a nursing home.
Okay.
And the reasoning behind that, she was not a resident there. Don't go trolling nursing homes. If you're single, don't go trolling nursing homes for a day.
Absolutely not.
But we were actually working there.
It's our summer job.
Yeah, you were home from college. Yeah,
right.
Getting ready to start your junior year of college. I had just graduated high school.
Which, if people can add, they realize I'm 2 years older than you.
And you've always said,
as long as you look older than me.
And I have taken care of that all these years.
Yeah,
I
grew
this
okay.
right here just for you.
Thank you, babe.
So
I appreciate it.
So with that said, I remember watching, seeing you, not watching, I don't want to sound creepy, but we'd pass each other at the time clock.
Right.
And I remember seeing you and thinking like, who is this beautiful woman? And honestly thought you kind of looked like somebody who was probably already taken, married, engaged, whatever. But
okay. And then I was taking care of some residents that always wanted to know about my love life. And when I told them, I broke up with my boyfriend, I had one resident say, there's this guy that comes through here at nighttime. You need to meet him. And come to find out, it was you.
Come to find out, he did not have dementia.
I know.
He
was telling the truth.
He was right on point.
He was telling the truth.
So a few weeks later, we meet and we
start talking.
And that you hear us talking, you'll hear us talk in this podcast about being best friends. That was the beginnings.
Yes.
Of being best friends. And I know that in this day and age, people, is it really possible for husband and wife to be best friends? I'd say you got to be best friends with each other. All these years, we've walked together in unity. All these years, we've spent a lot of time together. We work together and spend a lot of time together. I can't imagine not being best friends with you. So it is very possible. And I would tell you to work on that. Let that be something that in your marriage, in your family, that as husband and wife, you are best friends.
Right,
so,
and that you cultivate that so that you can build that foundation for the stronger family that you need.
So we meet Tioga Manor Nursing Home. We're both working summer jobs. Let's talk about first date. Okay, this is big. This is big because We go out on that first date. Where'd I take you? I spent some big dollars on
Yeah.
you.
Well, I thought you were a big spender because you pulled out that $50 bill.
Big spender.
And I was like, okay, this is good. He is paying for the whole thing, because past boyfriends,
Let's not get into that.
we shared expenses.
Let's not get
And
into
so
that.
I was like, hey, this guy, he's got some money,
Okay.
because I was spoiled. And
So
I
where
had
we go on our first date? Yeah. Oh, you go back to that spoiled thing.
Mhm.
I'm going to vouch for that, but let's talk
Okay,
about
so
where
we
we went on the
went-
first date.
Well, there's only so much to do in Alexandria, which is Louisiana, where we grew up. And so back in the day, we did quite a few things. Taco Bell.
59, 79, 99 days of menu.
Yeah.
So 59 cents, 79 cents, 99 cents. And I'll let you order whatever you wanted
Absolutely.
off the menu.
Yeah. And then you pulled out that $50 bill. That
Yeah.
was just like, all right, this is a good guy. So then we went bowling,
Bowling. I even let you win.
but I was an experienced bowler. So yeah, you let me win. Okay. Then we went and played putt-putt.
Yeah.
And also played pool at the putt-putt place.
And I remember going to the jukebox, putting a quarter in and playing Alan Jackson's Blue-Blooded Woman, Redneck Man, and you were mortified that I'd played country music because you could
Right.
not stand country and Western music.
Right.
So-
And not to mention that when you showed up at the door to pick me up, you had on cowboy boots.
Yeah.
And I thought, I don't know about this.
I was a cowboy. I lived in Dry Prong, Louisiana.
I know, but I don't know. I was just like, I'm not sure about this.
Okay, so the highlight of the date that night, this was the beginnings of our friendship.
Yeah.
But the highlight of the date that night is whenever I took you back to your grandmother's house, and I remember standing in that driveway with you. You may not realize that this is something that really stood out to me that night. And I know what
Okay.
some of you are thinking, like, what's fixing to happen? But she stood in that driveway and she read me the riot act.
I did. I kind of told you what for.
She said, I'm not like, all these other girls. You're not going to do this. You're not going to do that. You're going to keep your hands to yourself.
Right. I did.
And if you're listening to this podcast and you were single, what really stood out to me that night was there was something different about this woman. Now, I was a Christian and I knew that I was dating somebody who was a Christian, but she was not just saying she was a Christian. She was backing it up with her lifestyle. And she was setting her standards that night. So if you're single and you're listening to this, I want you to hear me on this. What was big to me that night is she was willing to tell me, this is how I live my life, and I'm not going to change any of that for you just so that I can date you. And that really spoke to me, because I think a lot of times, people, they're looking for that right someone and they're willing to change who they are, or they're willing to change their convictions or their Christian standards to be able to be in a relationship. And I'm telling you that really spoke to me that night. And it kind of ignited this desire in me to develop a relationship with you because of who you were in Christ. So,
I think we call that, I was setting the standard, but in today's terms, I think it would be called putting a boundary.
putting boundaries in place.
And I think, just putting that boundary out there is probably me setting the standard of what was expected may have helped draw you more to me.
Yeah, I was like,
than to push you away.
Right. I got to spend more time with this woman, want to get to know her better, because I see that she loves the Lord. She's a woman of God, and these are the standards, and she's not going to let me cross the boundaries. And it's not that I would have wanted to. I mean, I was pursuing the Lord as well, but at the same token, I was an 18-year-old young man.
Right. And I think too, there needed to be that honesty. I wanted the honesty up front with everything, because I had dated some guys who were not so honest.
Yeah. Okay.
in the past.
Now, and then after reading me the riot act, telling me all this stuff, what did you say after that?
Oh goodness, really?
Yeah, I'm calling you out.
So I laid down the law and then I said, okay, so now are you going to kiss me or what?
And I was actually a little scared, but that was our first date. That was our first kiss.
And our first kiss,
and
yes.
it was the beginning of I could say it no other way. I know some people say it's kind of cheesy, but it actually beautiful friendship.
Yes, yeah.
And we really began to focus on being best friends. Well, I don't know about that night, but being friends from that day forward, which grew into being best friends and just spent a lot of time together.
Right. Spending every waking moment when we were not working at the nursing home, we spent time together and talking on the phone and going and doing things together.
So
yeah.
Moving from that first date to a year later, asked you to marry me and worked hard, worked overtime, saved up money, bought a ring. And whenever we got engaged, and I shared the first podcast, I'm a foodie, I like to eat, took her to the fine dining establishment.
Fine dining.
Where at, Stacey?
Ryan's Steakhouse.
Ryan's Steakhouse. It was a chain restaurant. It's since gone bankrupt. But back in the day, it was the place to go. I mean, they had the super bar. You could go get all kinds of
dessert bar.
Dessert bar.
Yeah.
And her friend, we went out to go eat that night.
It was
with
like
some
a
friends,
double date. Yeah.
And I showed her the ring, had it in my pocket. Was not intending on asking you to marry me that night.
Right, because weren't you going to like plan it out a little bit better,
Plan
maybe
something romantic.
Not like these days. It's a big production, but back in the day, it was not such a big production.
That is correct. And I remember her friend was just like, you have to ask her to marry you. And tonight, she thrust the ring in my hand. I'm walking up to go get some dessert for Stacey. So I made her a bowl of the swirl ice cream. And in the top of it, where a cherry would go, I actually stuck this diamond ring in the top of it, bring it back, put it in front of her, and you almost ate it.
Right. I was oblivious. I'm like talking, having a conversation. I didn't really notice it. I mean, it was
giant. You didn't notice the giant diamond?
Huge diamond. Tell us how big that diamond was.
Quarter carat. Big spender, big baller. I mean, I was working at Dairy Queen, okay? So,
to pay for that ring.
To pay for that ring.
That's right.
So put the ring in front of her. She almost eats it, but when you saw it.
And then I was like, oh my gosh. And then we were like, rolls for everybody. Because we were celebrating.
Pop the question, asked you to marry me. And Ryan, I know that it's so romantic whenever I share that story, and you've hated it whenever I share that story.
I've been like, oh my gosh, really? We could have gone to some other fancy
But
restaurant.
Here's the cool part. It wasn't a production. It wasn't something that was planned. It wasn't something where I had photographers and all this kind of stuff there. It was just, I loved you, you loved me.
Right.
And we want to get married. So engagement, fast forward, moving from that. We get engaged. We're engaged for a year.
Right. We dated for a year. We were engaged for a year to plan the wedding.
To get married till you finished college.
Right.
You were pursuing your degree in music. You wanted to be a music teacher, a vocalist. And the marriage, whenever we got married at that little church in Tioga, tell them what color the carpet was.
Oh, it was beautifully decorated. It had orange carpet.
And
it has since been updated.
It has.
But then it was orange carpet. So we made that work, though.
Yeah. When you want to get married, you can make anything
right.
work.
That's right. You can come up with a plan.
So we get married, exchange vows, and we head off on our honeymoon. And I'm so green in this. Okay. Now at this point, I didn't have a credit card, and we go on our honeymoon, and Stacey kept asking about the place that we were going to stay. And I'm like, it's okay. I've got it covered. Did not know you were supposed to give a credit card.
Right, to reserve your room.
To reserve your room. And we get there and find out that our room in the honeymoon suite at the Holiday Inn in Pensacola, Florida, they had given away our room because it was 6:30. The cutoff time is 6 o'clock. So where did we wind up? You tell them where we wound up that night.
Okay, well, it wasn't Pensacola. It was Panama City.
Oh.
You just said Pensacola. We went to Panama City.
I'm busted because I
for our honeymoon. It was close. It was close.
It was in Florida.
It was in Florida. That's right. So, yes, I knew that they would give our room away after 6 o'clock if you didn't have a credit card number. But I was trusting that you had taken care of that. So, yeah, we get there and they're like, we are so sorry. We have given your room away. And they tried to help us find a place. And everything was booked because it was in June.
It was peak vacation time.
It was peak vacation time. Now, they did make up for it. They did. The next night, we were able to come back and they had, the champagne and the strawberries and all the good stuff. But so we ended up at what I would consider, oh gosh, should I say that? What I would consider that to be?
The Hooker Hotel.
The Hooker Hotel.
It was the La Brisa Inn.
La Brisa Inn. I should have thought, oh my gosh, are we stepping off into this marriage? Is this the hopefully this is not the downhill slide that we're going to take.
Well, the first night of our honeymoon, we wound up staying in a hotel with well, let's just say there's ladies of the evening walking
Ladies
around
of the
outside.
evening.
And so the first clue should have been, do we want it by the hour or for the night?
Yes.
But it was the last hotel room.
Right.
I
It
mean,
was.
everything was gone. And we had looked for hours and we finally wound up staying at this place. And it's the only time I've ever stayed in a hotel. I remember sleeping with a firearm on the dresser next to us because we were actually very nervous to stay there.
I'm not an early riser, but I remember like, let's wake up, let's get out of this place like really fast. I just wanted to go somewhere else.
And they actually got us in the honeymoon suite for the next night. So
yes,
we made it through. Look, if you can make it through stuff like that, I think you can kind of make it through anything. And I would just say that the hand of the Lord was there to protect us that night, watch over us. And I remember thinking, whenever we got engaged, we're moving towards this wedding. Proverbs chapter 18, verse 22 says, when a man finds a wife, he finds a good thing and he obtains the favor of the Lord. And that verse has always stood out to me because there's nothing like stepping into marriage. It is a challenge. Yes. There's all these different obstacles that you will face a lot of times. In the last episode, I shared with you, that we just thought we'd go into marriage, there'd be no issues, no problems, but quite honestly, when you step into marriage, it's full of obstacles. It's full of things. And the favor of the Lord is there to help you to navigate those different things that you're going to face on a daily basis. And so that was one of our first challenges because I remember that the opportunity was there for us to, get into a pretty serious disagreement because she was aggravated with me that I had not given credit. I didn't have a credit card. Here I am, this young guy, but I wouldn't listen to her. I was so like, you know what? I got this. I don't need your help with this. I can handle this. And I discovered quickly, I do need your help with this. And it taught me in marriage that it really is about
so we needed to work together,
communicating, being in unity together. And we'll talk about a lot of this stuff in upcoming episodes. But that very first obstacle taught me a lot in marriage.
So it was kind of a scary first night in Panama City, but then everything kind of came back together and we didn't let it ruin our honeymoon. We didn't. It could have.
A lot of brides would say that they're nervous and a little scared on their honeymoon as to what's going to happen. And I can say that you were nervous and scared that night for other reasons.
Right.
Because you didn't want to get mugged.
Right. It was either stay there or sleep in our car. I didn't know which one was going to be safer.
Imagine sleeping in your car on your honeymoon. That would be crazy. So, okay, so let's move from there. We made it through that. Moved into our very first apartment, Tanglewood Terrace. And here we are making a life together. And the honeymoon period, everything's exciting. I remember you were working at that point for an eye doctor.
Yes, I was working for an eye doctor and then eventually started working as a music teacher.
And that was a lot of fun. I remember whenever you stepped into that job as music teacher, just going and spending time in class and with the students and all that kind of stuff. I know you enjoyed that.
That was a growing experience in itself for sure.
Teaching school then was not like teaching school now.
Oh, it was absolutely different.
Yeah. So, okay, here we are, first apartment, and there was something that happened that first year. I'm going to say that it probably was one of the largest challenges that we probably had the first 10 years of our marriage. And it involved me making a purchase. And yes. I was excited about this purchase, but you were not so excited about the purchase. You remember what it was?
Oh, yes. It was this wonderful little dirt bike.
And now let me give a little bit of backstory here.
You had to have.
I had to have this dirt bike. 20-year-old male, excited about buying a dirt bike. But let me give you some perspective to this story. I had been unemployed for about 3 months. I lost my job. And I had been working 2 jobs to make up for the shortfall. I worked 2 jobs too for a little while. Okay. And I came across this great deal. A friend of mine wanted to share or sell me his dirt bike. And I remember
made you a great deal.
It made me a great deal. I remember whenever I bought this dirt bike, the comment that you made to me was like, you didn't even tell me about this. And I said, yes, I did. Because I told you, I said, I'm going to buy this dirt bike. And you said, yeah, sure, right. You're going to buy a dirt bike. And I'm like, well, she gave me permission.
Right.
Now I can go buy this dirt bike.
See, that's a whole lesson on communication for your first year.
We need to dedicate an episode to communication because the number one reason for divorce in America is communication issues. And I got to tell you what, it troubles me because divorce is such one of those words that people throw around. You get married, you think, you know what? we're not getting along, we're squabbling, we're fussing, so let's just get divorced. And I know that when you and I went into marriage, one of the things that we laid down as part of the law that we're going to live by, that divorce was not an option.
Right. Divorce is not an option.
We're
And
gonna
we don't say the D word
and
when we would get into fights.
We're going to navigate and work our way through all these things that we face. And I got to tell you what, that episode was probably the challenge to that. Like, are we actually going to live by this and say that this is a part of who we are? Or are we going to make our way through this marriage, and are we going to go our separate ways, or are we going to live with what we say, how we're going to live?
I definitely believe that was one of those situations that was kind of a mile marker in that first year of marriage, that I learned with getting so upset to not run off and go talk about the situation to other people that would cause issues in our marriage. And then it was also about the money. I was like, where on earth did you get the money to buy that dirt bike? And so you want to tell about that?
Well, I tell you, I've been saving up my lunch money and spending on this dirt bike, but I went and took a draw from some money, and it was a foolish purchase. We're going to do an episode specifically on finances and marriage.
Okay.
But it was foolish. It was a bad decision, and it challenged our marriage. But I'm going to tell you what, we both grew through that.
We did.
And it was one of the things that we made our way through that challenge. And the Lord, Proverbs chapter 18, when you find a wife, you find a good thing, and the favor of the Lord is there. I think that the favor of the Lord was there because we allowed Him to direct us and lead us through that. And we came to an understanding. We're going to talk about everything, and we're going to be in unity about every decision from this point forward.
That is definitely what came out of that situation.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, whenever I do premarital counseling for couples, I sit down and always
use that story as an example?
I don't always use that story, but I do like to talk to them about communication and being in unity about every decision you make financially. So we learned something big from that. So first year challenge in marriage, we may talk about that in a future episode. But let's move from there. We step from, at this point, you're a school teacher. I eventually moved into the finance industry, was working as a finance officer. We get an opportunity to step into ministry. We had not had plans to go into ministry. I'm like, I don't want to.
Not full-time.
Not full-time. We were enjoying the volunteer aspect of it. But the only way I can describe it is just God opened the door.
He did.
We moved to Lafayette, Louisiana. We step into the role of being children's pastors. You were still a school teacher at this point, and I step into a full-time position at a church as a children's pastor, and we start our family. And from here, we have Tyler. Now, he's our oldest son, and every family needs to have that first child who's just so easy. He slept through the night. He was, he wasn't a fussy kid. He was a good baby. And so every family, I think, needs to have that first child that is just a good child.
Yeah, and when we started having our babies, we just kept having babies for about 4 years. I think I stayed pregnant. We ended up with 3 boys, and when Tyler was 2, I had Bryce, and when Bryce was 14 months, I had Reese.
So 3 children under the age of 4. And you talk about a challenge.
Right.
So that was a lot of fun. This young family, we're in ministry, and, facing the different things that we're walking through in life, we learn to do it together.
Well, you were saying about being children's pastors. Yes, they hired you to be the children's pastor, but we did that together.
And
we've always done all ministry together.
And that's really what, talk about the friendship that we have within the marriage. We've always done everything together.
Right.
I think that's what really builds friendship. As you spend time together, you really work on building that marriage because you're together all the time. So, okay, from there, tell us, so you got these 3 kids, raising them up. What is the most challenging part? Okay, from birth all the way through from the time where we are now, empty nesting, what was the most challenging age? And then let's talk about the most fun age. What did you consider the most challenging age to raise your kiddos?
Probably the stages of like 2 and 3 year olds.
That was challenging?
Yeah, that was challenging. The thing that was challenging for me was that as soon as I would get one out of that certain stage, the next one was right behind. So I felt like whatever season or stage that we were in, I stayed in that for a longer period of time than normal because they were so close together. So that though every age was a lot of fun, I still think that, that them being little like that, it was a little bit more difficult.
I would have thought you were going to say the teenage years were the most challenging.
Well, it was challenging, but in a different way.
Okay. All right. What was the funnest age raising the kids?
I think when they were around age 10, I just think that age 10 was the best.
I'd agree. Ages.
They still loved their mama. They weren't embarrassed of me yet.
Ages 9 and 10, I would say were a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So fast forward, we go up raising the kids. We launched this church. We wind up moving from Lafayette over to Baton Rouge. We actually stepped into the role of pastoring. We had a church, about 35 people. It was a small church. And we eventually wound up moving that church to the place where we kind of relaunched. We planted a new church through that existing congregation. And it was a challenge for us because here we are spending all this time pouring into the church, but the kids were right there with us.
They were. And they were younger. I think the oldest one was 7 at the time when we moved to Baton Rouge.
And so when we launched Journey Church, the church that we currently pastor and have pastored for the last 20 years, the kids were right there in the midst of it.
Absolutely.
They were involved in the building of our facility. They were involved in the launch services. And so here we are all these years later. Church has grown from 35 to now 2 campuses. Very large, bustling, hundreds of people. And it's been a lot of fun. Been a lot of challenges along the way, but we've had the opportunity to be able to speak into so many young couples' lives to help them in their marriages. And we've used a lot of the stories of our challenges, our frustrations, our triumphs all along the way.
With our marriage and with parenting our children. Absolutely.
All right. So today, we talk a little bit about, setting your standards for who you are as a person in Christ and not deviating from your standards. That's what you really ministered to me through you when we met. We talk about unity. We talk about friendship within the marriage. And I cannot wait for some, what was that?
Being best friends.
Yep. I can't wait for some of the upcoming episodes because we're going to talk a lot about some of the challenges we faced with the kiddos specifically and how we overcome those things. We're going to talk about within our marriage, some things that were great within our marriage that also helped bring us to the place where we are today.
Right. The ups, the downs.
The all around.
The all around. For sure.
So thank you so much for tuning in today to Love Like Crazy. If you've enjoyed listening to this podcast, please like it, share it, help us get the word out, subscribe to it. As I like to say, let all your friends, your neighbors, your relatives, your enemies, everybody know about this. And thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Jay.
And I'm Stacey.
And this is Love Like Crazy.